Disgusting single dad. A saleswoman sprayed him with perfume in front of his little girl, but when the CEO made her bow and apologize, nobody could have imagined the secret fight that would follow. Will this father lose everything, or prove he's the one person his daughter can never live without? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun peeked through thin curtains as Ethan Miller's alarm buzzed at 6 a.m. He rubbed his tired eyes and swung his legs over the side of his worn mattress, his muscles still aching from yesterday's work under cars. The small bedroom was sparse, just a bed, a simple dresser, and a photo of his late wife Sarah smiling down at him. "Another day," he whispered to the photo. "Help me do right by our girl." Padding down the narrow hallway in his threadbare slippers, Ethan gently pushed open Lily's door. His 7-year-old daughter was curled up beneath her favorite purple blanket, brown curls splayed across her pillow. The sight of her peaceful face made his heart swell, just like it did every morning. "Rise and shine, sweetheart," he called softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Time for school." Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Morning, Daddy," she mumbled, reaching up for their daily morning hug. Ethan gathered her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Did you dream good dreams?" he asked, helping her sit up. "Uh-huh. I was flying on a rainbow unicorn." She giggled, suddenly more awake. "Sounds magical. Now, let's get ready for school, okay? I made your favorite peanut butter and banana sandwich for lunch." While Lily got dressed, Ethan moved through their small kitchen with practiced efficiency. The counters were clean but chipped, the appliances old but well-maintained. He'd learned to stretch every dollar, making sure Lily never went hungry even when his own stomach growled. He pulled her neatly packed lunch from the fridge, sandwich, apple, and 2 cookies he'd saved from yesterday's grocery store sale. Her backpack sat ready by the door, homework checked and signed the night before. "Daddy," Lily's voice carried from her room. "I can't find my other shoe." Ethan found her kneeling by her bed, holding up one scuffed sneaker. The sole was peeling away from the fabric, held together by determination and a prayer. His heart sank as he spotted its mate pushed against the wall, in even worse condition. "Here it is, honey." He retrieved the shoe, noting how the laces were frayed nearly through. "We'll get you new ones soon, okay? These are getting pretty worn out." Lily nodded bravely, though he saw her glance down at her classmates' shiny new shoes every morning at drop-off. "It's okay, Daddy. They still work." After breakfast, oatmeal with a drizzle of honey, Ethan helped Lily brush her teeth and pack her backpack. At the front door, he knelt to tie her shoes extra tight, hoping the loose sole would hold another day. "Have a great day at school, sweetheart," he said, hugging her goodbye. "Miss Henderson will pick you up for after-school care, and I'll get you right after work." "Love you, Daddy," Lily called, skipping down their cracked sidewalk to where the school bus waited. Once she was safely aboard, Ethan returned inside and opened the stack of bills he'd been avoiding. Electricity, water, rent, all marked final notice in angry red letters. He'd been juggling payments, paying just enough to keep the utilities on, but it was getting harder each month. Opening his wallet, he counted the meager contents. $43 and some change. Not enough for bills and new shoes. His next paycheck wouldn't come for 5 days. With a heavy sigh, Ethan changed into his work clothes, clean but permanently stained with motor oil, and headed to Miller's Auto Repair. The small garage had been his sanctuary for 15 years, the only place he truly felt competent. Cars made sense. They didn't judge you for your clothes or your bank account. "Morning, Joe," he called to his elderly coworker as he unlocked the garage doors. "Morning, Ethan. Mrs. Patterson's already called twice about her Mercedes." Ethan nodded, mentally preparing himself. Mrs. Patterson was one of their wealthiest customers and the most demanding. Sure enough, she arrived an hour later in her gleaming silver Mercedes, designer purse swinging from her arm. "This car is my baby," she announced, barely glancing at Ethan. "I expect it to be treated accordingly." "Yes, ma'am," Ethan replied politely, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "What seems to be the problem?" "It's making an absolutely dreadful noise. Simply dreadful. And I need it fixed immediately. I have a country club luncheon tomorrow." As Ethan examined the engine, Mrs. Patterson watched with obvious distaste. "Do try not to get any grease on the paint," she added. "The last time, I had to have it detailed again." The morning crawled by. More customers came and went, some friendly, others like Mrs. Patterson, looking down their noses at the grease-stained mechanic who dared touch their precious vehicles. Each interaction chipped away at his spirit a little more. During his lunch break, Ethan sat in his small office, eating a sandwich while studying his bills again. The numbers hadn't magically changed. He thought of Lily's worn shoes, remembering how she'd tried to hide a small hole in the toe from him last week. A text message lit up his phone. "Mr. Miller, please remember it's your month to provide snacks for Lily's class next week. Mrs. Roberts." Another expense he'd forgotten. Ethan's shoulders slumped as he added it to his mental list of obligations he could barely meet. The afternoon brought more cars, more condescending customers. By closing time, his back ached and his hands were raw from working under hoods all day. He counted out the day's earnings. Good money for the garage, but his own take-home pay would barely cover groceries. That evening, after picking up Lily from Miss Henderson's house, Ethan sat at their small kitchen table while Lily did her homework. He pulled out his wallet one more time, hoping he'd somehow missed some cash earlier. $43 stared back at him, unchanged and insufficient. Looking at Lily's concentrated face as she worked on her math problems, her feet swinging beneath the chair in those falling-apart shoes, Ethan made his decision. Tomorrow, he'd take her to buy new shoes, even if it meant being late on another bill. His daughter's needs had to come first. "How's the homework coming, sweetheart?" he asked, tucking the wallet away. "Almost done, Daddy. Want to see my drawing from art class?" "Always." He smiled as she proudly held up a crayon picture of two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands beneath a bright yellow sundae. "It's us," she explained unnecessarily, beaming. "Miss Henderson said it's beautiful." "It sure is," Ethan agreed, his throat tight with emotion. "Just like you." Saturday morning painted the small town in gentle autumn colors. Ethan Miller walked hand in hand with his 7-year-old daughter Lily down Main Street toward Anderson's department store. His work jacket, spotted with dark grease stains from yesterday's jobs, hung loose on his tired frame, but Lily skipped beside him, her worn shoes scuffing against the sidewalk, her excitement lighting up the morning. "Will they have sparkly ones, Daddy?" Lily asked, her brown pigtails bouncing with each step. "Jenny at school has shoes that light up when she walks." Ethan squeezed her small hand. "We'll see what they have, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about?" His voice was gentle but firm. "We need to stick to our budget." "I know, Daddy. Regular shoes are okay too." Lily's smile never dimmed. She swung their joined hands back and forth, humming a tune she'd learned in music class. The department store loomed ahead, its wide windows displaying mannequins in fancy fall outfits. Ethan's shoulders tensed as they approached the gleaming glass doors. Inside, bright fluorescent lights illuminated aisles of clothing, housewares, and shoes stretching into the distance. The air smelled of new fabric and perfume. "The children's section is this way," Ethan said quietly, guiding Lily past racks of expensive dresses. He kept his eyes down, aware of his reflection in the polished floor tiles. A grease-stained mechanic who looked out of place among the pristine displays. They found the children's shoe section, filled with tiny sneakers and boots in every color imaginable. Lily's eyes grew wide. "Look, Daddy, those pink ones." As Ethan knelt to help Lily try on a sensible pair of navy blue sneakers, the click of high heels approached. A saleswoman stopped nearby. Her perfectly styled hair and crisp navy suit a stark contrast to Ethan's worn appearance. Her golden name tag read, "Karen." Karen's nose wrinkled as she noticed the grease stains on Ethan's jacket. She stepped back, making a show of smoothing her skirt. "Can I help you?" Her tone dripped with disdain. "We're just looking at the moment, thank you," Ethan replied politely, focusing on buckling Lily's shoe. "Daddy, these feel good," Lily said, standing to test them. "Not too big like my old ones." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. She turned to a fellow saleswoman nearby and spoke in a stage whisper clearly meant to be heard. "Disgusting single dad. Probably can't even afford to shop here. And look at that filthy jacket, he's getting grease all over the carpet." Before Ethan could respond, Karen pulled out a bottle of perfume from her pocket. "Here, let me help with that smell." She spritzed the air around Ethan aggressively, the strong scent making him cough. Lily pressed against her father's side, her small fingers clutching his jacket. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. Other shoppers had stopped to stare. Some whispered behind their hands, while others quickly turned away, pretending not to notice. The perfume hung heavy in the air, mixing with Ethan's embarrassment. His cheeks burned, but he kept his voice steady for Lily's sake. "Come on, sweetie. We should go." He helped her remove the new shoes, his hands gentle despite their slight trembling. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she slipped her old shoes back on. "But Daddy, my shoes." "We'll try somewhere else," he whispered, standing and taking her hand. The weight of the stairs felt like stones on his back as he turned toward the exit. Karen's triumphant smirk followed them, her voice carrying across the quiet department. "That's right. Know your place." "Excuse me? What did you just say to him?" The sharp, authoritative voice cut through the tension like a knife. Everyone turned to see a distinguished older man in a casual sweater step forward from behind a display rack, his expression thunderous. The tall, distinguished man in the tailored suit stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. The fluorescent lights of Anderson's department store seemed to dim as Miss Weston's authoritative voice filled the space. "I asked you a question," Mr. Weston said, his gray eyes fixed on Karen. "What did you just say to this gentleman?" Karen's perfectly made-up face paled. Her hands, which had just held the perfume bottle like a weapon, now trembled. "Mr. Weston, I didn't know you were visiting today." Clearly. His tone could have frozen water. "I've been walking these aisles incognito, observing our customer service. And what I just witnessed is absolutely unacceptable." Shoppers gathered at the ends of nearby aisles, watching the scene unfold. Ethan stood frozen, one arm protectively around Lily, who pressed her face against his work jacket. "Sir, I can explain," Karen stammered, her usual confidence crumbling. "I was just trying to maintain our store's standards." "Standards?" Mr. Weston's voice rose slightly. "Our standards include treating every customer with respect and dignity. This gentleman came in to buy shoes for his daughter, and you chose to humiliate him. Is that how we treat hard-working parents at Anderson's?" Karen's shoulders slumped. "No, sir. I want you to apologize. Right now. And make it sincere." The silence in the store grew thick. Karen's heels clicked against the tile as she turned to face Ethan and Lily. Her face was flushed with embarrassment. I apologize for my behavior," she said, the words coming out stiff and formal. At Mr. Weston's stern look, she actually bowed slightly. "It was wrong of me to treat you that way. I'm sorry." A few customers started clapping. The applause spread, echoing through the store. Ethan's face reddened, unused to being the center of such attention. Lily peeked out from behind him, her eyes wide with wonder at the sudden change in their situation. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging at his jacket. "They're clapping for you." Ethan patted her shoulder, already taking a step backward. "We should probably go, sweetie. Please wait." Mr. Weston's voice was softer now, but still carried authority. He approached Ethan, extending his hand. "I'm James Weston, CEO of Anderson's department store chain. I'd like to speak with you for a moment, if you don't mind." Ethan hesitated, then shook the offered hand. His own calloused palm met Mr. Weston's firm grip. "Ethan Miller, this is my daughter, Lily." "Hello, Lily." Mr. Weston smiled warmly at the little girl, who gave a shy wave in return. He turned back to Ethan. "Mr. Miller, I watched how you handled this situation. Most people would have lost their temper, and rightfully so. But you remained dignified, thinking only of protecting your daughter. That shows remarkable character." "I just wanted to buy Lily some shoes," Ethan said quietly. "We didn't mean to cause any trouble." "You caused no trouble at all," Mr. Weston assured him. "In fact, I'd like to make you an offer. We're starting a management training program next month. It's paid training, with flexible hours and real career potential. Would you be interested in applying? Ethan blinked, sure he had misheard. Me? Sir? I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about retail management. You know about hard work, dignity, and treating people right. Those are things I can't teach. The rest? That's what training is for. Mr. Weston pulled out a business card and pressed it into Ethan's hand. Think about it. Call my office on Monday if you're interested. Karen stood to the side, her face a mixture of shock and barely contained anger as she watched her boss offer an opportunity to the man she had just tried to humiliate. A few customers were still watching, smiling approvingly at the scene. Thank you, sir, Ethan managed, tucking the card into his pocket. I'll think about it. Excellent. Now please, let us help you find those shoes for your daughter. On the house, of course. Oh no, I couldn't. I insist. Mr. Weston's tone was kind, but firm. He called over another sales associate, a young woman with a friendly smile. Sarah, please help Mr. Miller and his daughter find whatever they need. The rest of their shopping experience passed in a blur. Sarah helped Lily try on several pairs of shoes, including a sparkly pair that lit up just like her friend Jenny's. Ethan sat watching his daughter's face light up with each new pair, still trying to process everything that had happened. Later that night, back in their small house, Ethan tucked Lily into bed. Her new shoes sat proudly by her dresser, still in their box but visible enough to make her smile every time she looked at them. Today was different, wasn't it, Daddy? Lily said as Ethan pulled her covers up to her chin. It sure was, kiddo. That nice man stood up for you. And everyone clapped. She reached out to touch his face. Daddy, maybe people will see how good you are now. Ethan smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. The business card seemed to burn in his pocket, a possibility he wasn't sure he deserved. But Lily's words echoed in his mind, full of that pure faith that only children could possess. The manila envelope sat on Ethan's scratched kitchen table like a foreign object. Morning sunlight streamed through the worn curtains, casting warm patches across its official-looking surface. Ethan's work-roughened fingers traced the embossed company logo of Anderson's department stores while his coffee grew cold beside him. Inside lay an invitation that seemed meant for someone else. Someone who wore pressed suits instead of oil-stained coveralls. Someone who belonged in boardrooms rather than beneath car engines. Ethan pulled out the glossy brochure, his calloused hands feeling too rough against the smooth paper. Management Training Program, he read aloud, the words tasting unfamiliar in his mouth. The pictures showed people in crisp business attire, their smiles confident and assured. None of them had grease under their fingernails or patches on their clothes. Daddy, I can't find my blue hair tie. Lily's voice carried from her bedroom, breaking his reverie. Ethan tucked the papers back into the envelope. Check under your pillow, sweetie. That's where it was yesterday. A moment later, Lily bounced into the kitchen, her backpack already on her shoulders. Her eyes caught sight of the envelope. Is that from the nice man at the store? Mr. Weston, Ethan corrected gently, rising to pour his untouched coffee into the sink. And yes, it Island. Are you going to do it? Her eyes shone with hope. Ethan grabbed his keys, deflecting the question. We better get moving. Don't want to be late for school. The drive to Riverside Elementary was short, their old pickup truck rumbling through streets still quiet in the early morning. Ethan noticed Lily fidgeting with her worn backpack strap, probably thinking about the envelope he'd left on the table. As they pulled into the school parking lot, Ethan spotted a sleek silver SUV taking up 2 spaces near the entrance. Karen stepped out, designer handbag swinging from her arm, her son trailing behind her. Her eyes locked onto Ethan's truck, and her perfectly lined lips curved into a sneer. Look who it is, she whispered to another mother nearby. The grease monkey who got me in trouble. Ethan kept his face neutral as he helped Lily out of the truck. He'd learned long ago that dignity didn't require a response to every insult. But he felt Karen's glare, burning into his back, as he walked Lily to the school entrance, noticed how she huddled with other parents, their whispers following him like shadows. Have a great day, kiddo, he said, kneeling to hug Lily. I'll pick you up after work. Don't forget about the paper, Daddy, Lily reminded him, her small face serious. The afternoon found Ethan parking his truck in the vast lot of Anderson's corporate headquarters. He'd changed out of his work clothes into his one decent button-down shirt, though he couldn't completely hide the ingrained traces of motor oil under his nails. The lobby was all glass and chrome, his work boots squeaking against the polished floor. A dozen other people sat in the conference room for the information session, all of them looking like they belonged there more than he did. "Ah, Mr. Miller," Mr. Weston's voice carried across the room. "I'm glad you came." Heads turned, and Ethan felt his face warm. But Mr. Weston's firm handshake and genuine smile helped steady him. "The program is intensive," Mr. Weston explained to the group, "but we believe in developing talent from all backgrounds." His eyes met Ethan's. Sometimes the best leaders come from unexpected places. For the next hour, Ethan listened and took notes, his mechanic's mind breaking down the program like he would an engine repair. Step by step, piece by piece. The salary they mentioned would mean no more choosing between new shoes for Lily and paying the electric bill. The benefits package included health insurance better than anything he'd ever had. But doubt crept in with every glance at his rough hands, with every memory of Karen's sneering face. He was a mechanic, good with tools and engines. What did he know about running a department store? That evening, after a simple dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Ethan sat on the edge of Lily's bed for their nightly story. But instead of reaching for her favorite book, Lily grabbed his hand. "Did you go to the meeting today?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "I did. And?" Her eyes were wide with anticipation. "It's complicated, sweetie." He smoothed her blanket. "It's a big change, and I'm not sure I'm the right person for—" "But you always tell me not to give up," Lily interrupted, her voice small but determined. "When I couldn't ride my bike, you said keep trying. When I thought my drawing was bad, you said practice makes better." Ethan's throat tightened. He could hear his own words coming back to him through his daughter's pure faith. "Please try, Daddy," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "Just try." Looking into her eyes, Ethan saw his late wife's determination, her unwavering belief in him. He thought of all the times he'd told Lily to face her fears, to persist even when things were hard. "Okay," he said softly, nodding. "Okay, I'll apply." Lily's face lit up with a smile that could outshine any star. She threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tight. "You're the bravest daddy ever!" Ethan held her close, his doubt mixing with a new feeling, something that felt almost like hope. Tomorrow, he would fill out that application, not because he was sure he could do it, but because his daughter believed he could. Sometimes, he realized, that had to be enough. The fluorescent lights of Anderson's corporate training room felt worlds away from the familiar glow of Ethan's garage. He sat straight-backed in his cleanest work shirt, having rushed here right after closing the shop. Around him, other trainees in crisp business attire took notes on their laptops while he carefully wrote in a spiral notebook with a mechanic's calloused hands. "Marketing fundamentals are essential to retail success," the instructor explained, pointing to charts on the screen. Ethan jotted down every word, determined not to waste this chance. He might not look the part, but he understood more than they knew. After all, running his garage had taught him plenty about customer service and business basics. The next afternoon, Ethan waited in the school pickup line, leaning against his old pickup truck. He noticed Karen standing with a cluster of other parents, her designer purse perched in the crook of her arm. She whispered something, and several heads turned to stare at him. Their eyes held a new kind of judgment. "I heard he can barely keep the lights on." Karen's voice carried just loud enough for him to hear. "Living in that tiny house, probably can't even afford proper meals." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes fixed on the school entrance. When Lily bounded out with her bright backpack bouncing, his forced smile became genuine. "Hey, kiddo, how was art class?" "Great, look what I made." Lily held up a colorful drawing of their house, complete with her attempt at writing "Home Sweet Home" across the top. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." He helped her into the truck, painfully aware of the whispers behind them. Over the next few days, the rumors grew like weeds. Ethan noticed how other parents pulled their children away when Lily approached at recess. Mrs. Thompson, Lily's teacher, started watching him with concerned eyes during pickup time. "Did you hear?" one mother stage whispered to another as Ethan walked past. "They say he works 2 jobs now. How can he possibly supervise his daughter properly?" "So sad," came the reply. "Children need stability." Ethan gripped Lily's hand tighter and walked faster. That evening, he helped her with homework at their small kitchen table, trying to focus on multiplication tables instead of the growing knot in his stomach. "Daddy, why was Emma's mom weird today?" Lily asked, erasing a wrong answer. "She used to invite me for playdates, but now she says Emma's too busy." Sometimes grown-ups are just. Ethan searched for the right words. Sometimes they don't understand things properly. "Don't worry about it, okay?" But the whispers became harder to ignore. At the training program, Ethan threw himself into learning, desperate to prove himself worthy of the opportunity. During the day, he fixed cars with the same dedication he'd always shown. Yet Karen's poison spread through the community like a slow-moving tide. "I heard the poor man can't even afford new clothes for her," Karen told the PTA meeting crowd. "And now he's never home? Someone should really look into the situation." The following week, Ethan noticed Mrs. Thompson pulling the school counselor aside after class, both of them glancing his way with worried expressions. He wanted to explain, to defend himself, but dignity kept him silent. What could he say? That he was trying his best? That every decision he made was for Lily? That Friday evening, after tucking Lily into bed with their nightly reading ritual, Ethan sorted through the mail at the kitchen table. Bills, advertisements, and then his heart stopped. An official-looking envelope from the Department of Social Services lay between the electric bill and a pizza coupon. With trembling fingers, he opened it. The letter inside was formal, cold. "Dear Mr. Miller, following concerns raised regarding the welfare and living conditions of your minor dependent, Lily Miller, our department is required to conduct a home evaluation. A caseworker will visit your residence next Thursday at 2:00 p.m. to assess the situation." The words blurred before his eyes. Ethan set the letter down and stared at it, the kitchen suddenly too quiet, except for the slow drip of the faucet he'd been meaning to fix. Through the thin walls, he could hear Lily's soft breathing from her bedroom, peaceful and unaware. His mind raced through their small house, the worn carpet, the second-hand furniture, the carefully patched curtains, everything clean but obviously old, everything loved but clearly showing its age. Would they see the care in these walls, or only the poverty? Would they understand that love couldn't be measured in square footage? The letter sat on the table like a judge's gavel, threatening to shatter the careful life he'd built for his daughter. Ethan's hands, strong enough to lift engines but powerless against whispers and prejudice, clenched into fists at his sides. The knock on the door came at precisely 3:30. Ethan wiped his sweaty palms on his cleanest pair of jeans and took a deep breath. He'd spent the morning frantically tidying their small home, though there was only so much he could do with the worn furniture and patched walls. "Coming," he called, his voice steadier than he felt. Opening the door revealed a woman in her 40s, dressed in a gray suit and carrying a leather portfolio. Her expression was professionally neutral, neither warm nor cold. "Mr. Miller? I'm Miss Thompson from Child Protective Services." She held up her badge. "I'm here for our scheduled home visit." "Yes, please come in." Ethan stepped aside, gesturing toward their living room. His eyes caught the frayed edge of their second-hand couch, and his stomach tightened. Miss Thompson's heels clicked against the linoleum floor as she entered, her pen already poised over her notepad. "Where is Lily?" "She's doing homework at the kitchen table. Would you like to see her room first?" The social worker nodded, following him down the narrow hallway. Lily's room was small but tidy, with crayon drawings covering one wall and her bed neatly made with its faded butterfly comforter. Miss Thompson noted the wooden dresser with one slightly crooked drawer, the small window with its cheerful though mismatched curtains. "Lily did the artwork herself," Ethan said softly, pointing to the wall of drawings. "She loves to draw. Her teacher says she has real talent." Miss Thompson made another note. "And where do you sleep, Mr. Miller?" "The living room couch folds out. I gave Lily the bedroom when—" He swallowed hard. when her mother passed. They moved to the kitchen where Lily sat at their small table, pencil in hand, working on math problems. Her face lit up when she saw her father. "Daddy, look, I got all my multiplication right." "That's great, sweetheart." Ethan's voice warmed with pride. "This is Miss Thompson. She's here to visit us today." "Hi," Lily waved cheerfully. "Do you want to see my drawings? Daddy hung them all up in my room." Miss Thompson's professional mask cracked slightly with a small smile. "I saw them. They're very nice." She turned to the refrigerator, opening it to inspect its contents. The shelves held simple but healthy foods: milk, eggs, vegetables, and sandwich supplies. But Ethan knew she also saw the generic brands, the careful portioning that spoke of tight budgeting. "Could I see your current bills and income statements?" she asked, turning back to him. Ethan retrieved a folder from the kitchen counter, hands trembling slightly as he handed it over. Inside were neatly organized but troubling documents: past due notices for utilities, carefully worked out payment plans, the mortgage statement showing he was barely keeping up. "Miss," Thompson's pen moved rapidly across her pad, "and you're currently working 2 jobs?" "Yes, ma'am. I run my own garage during the day, and I'm in a management training program in the evenings. It's a great opportunity." He tried to keep his voice steady. "The program even includes health insurance once I complete it." "And who watches Lily during your evening training?" "Mrs. Henderson next door. She's a retired teacher. She helps Lily with homework and makes sure she gets dinner on training nights." Ethan felt each question like a weight on his shoulders. Lily looked up from her homework again. "Mrs. Henderson makes really good cookies, and she tells me stories about when she was a teacher. But Daddy always comes home to tuck me in, even when he's super tired." Her innocent words hung in the air, full of trust and love. Miss Thompson's expression softened slightly, but her pen kept moving. "Mr. Miller, I noticed several late payments here, and the living space island." She glanced around the small kitchen. "I know it's not much," Ethan said quietly, "but every decision I make is for Lily. I'm working hard to give her more." "Daddy works so hard for me," Lily chimed in, abandoning her homework to wrap her arms around his waist. "He fixes cars all day and learns big words at night, and he never misses story time, even when he's sleepy." Miss Thompson watched their interaction closely, making more notes. "I can see that you care deeply for your daughter, Mr. Miller. However, we need to ensure stable living conditions and financial security." The visit continued for another 20 minutes, each moment feeling like an hour to Ethan. Miss Thompson checked the bathroom, inspected their first aid supplies, asked about Lily's school performance and medical records. Finally, she closed her portfolio. "I'll be filing my report with the department. You'll hear from us within the week about any necessary follow-up." Her voice remained professionally detached. "Thank you for your cooperation." Ethan walked her to the door, his heart pounding. As soon as it closed behind her, he returned to the kitchen where Lily still sat at the table. She looked up at him with complete trust in her eyes, unaware of the weight of what had just happened. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I'll never let anyone take you away," he whispered into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. But as he held his daughter, worry clouded his eyes, and his arms tightened protectively around her small frame. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the weathered steps of First Community Church. Ethan Miller stood at the bottom, hesitating. He hadn't been to church since Sarah's funeral 3 years ago. But something, maybe desperation, maybe hope, had drawn him here today. "Can we go in, Daddy?" Lily tugged at his hand, her Sunday dress slightly wrinkled but clean. She'd picked it out herself, insisting it made her look like a princess. "Sure, kiddo." Ethan smoothed his department store tie, the only one he owned. He'd ironed his shirt twice, trying to hide its age. Inside, the familiar scent of wood polish and old hymnals wrapped around them. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns on the worn carpet. A few early arrivals dotted the pews, their whispered conversations echoing in the high-ceilinged sanctuary. "Oh my, who do we have here?" A warm voice caught their attention. An elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes approached them, her smile genuine and welcoming. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Grace Henderson." "Ethan Miller," he replied, shaking her offered hand. "And this is my daughter Lily." Hi, Lily bounced on her toes, already drawn to Mrs. Henderson's grandmotherly presence. Would you like to sit with me? Mrs. Henderson gestured to a pew near the middle. Sometimes it's nice to have company during service. Ethan nodded gratefully, following her lead. As they settled in, he noticed how Mrs. Henderson subtly helped Lily find the right page in the hymnal, showing her where to follow along. Throughout the service, Ethan's mind kept wandering to the social services letter in his kitchen drawer. His shoulders slumped under the invisible weight. Mrs. Henderson noticed. She seemed to notice everything, but waited until after the final hymn to speak. "Would you and Lily join me for coffee hour?" she asked. "The church makes wonderful hot chocolate for the little ones." Lily's eyes lit up. "Can we, Daddy? Please?" In the church basement, while Lily sipped hot chocolate with other children at a nearby table, Mrs. Henderson stirred cream into her coffee and studied Ethan's tired face. "You're carrying quite a burden," she said simply. It wasn't a question. Ethan stared into his untouched coffee. "That obvious, huh? I was a teacher for 43 years, she replied. "You learn to read people, especially parents who are trying their best." Something in her tone, understanding without pity, made Ethan's careful walls crack. "I'm afraid I'm not enough," he admitted quietly. "For Lily, they're questioning whether I can take care of her properly." Mrs. Henderson's face softened. "Let me tell you something, Ethan. After my Harold passed, I raised 3 children on a teacher's salary in a tiny 2-bedroom house. We had second-hand everything. But do you know what my children remember most? Love, dedication, the way I never missed a school play, even if it meant taking the bus in the rain." She reached across the table, her weathered hand covering his. "I see how Lily looks at you. That's not a child who's lacking anything that truly matters." "But the social worker," Ethan began, "will see the same thing I do, Mrs." Henderson interrupted firmly. "A father who works hard, keeps his daughter clean and well-fed, and makes sure she knows she's loved. That's worth more than any fancy house or new clothes." Lily skipped back to their table, chocolate mustache decorating her upper lip. "Mrs. Henderson, you're so nice. Like a grandma." She paused, suddenly shy. "Can I call you Grandma H?" Mrs. Henderson's eyes misted. "I would be honored, sweetheart. See, Daddy?" Lily climbed onto Ethan's lap. "God sent us a grandma today." Mrs. Henderson chuckled, then turned serious. "Ethan, do you know what I see when I look at you? I see capability, strength, the kind that comes from putting one foot in front of the other, day after day, no matter how hard things get." She pulled a small notebook from her purse and wrote down her phone number. "I'm just 3 blocks from the church. My door is always open, and I make a mean pot of soup." For the first time in days, Ethan felt his chest loosen. Here was someone who saw him, really saw him, and didn't find him wanting. "Thank you," he managed, his voice rough. "Don't thank me, Mrs. Henderson said, standing up. "Just come back next Sunday, and remember, faith isn't just about believing in God. Sometimes it's about believing in yourself, too." As they walked home in the warm morning sun, Lily's hand in his, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate kind that keeps you awake at night, but the quiet, steady kind that helps you face another day. "I like Grandma H," Lily declared, skipping beside him. "She smells like cookies." Ethan squeezed her hand, remembering Mrs. Henderson's words about love being what children remember most. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the company's training room as Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his new second-hand dress shirt. Around him, other trainees in crisp suits and polished shoes chatted confidently about their college degrees and business experience. Ethan's weathered hands, still bearing traces of engine grease despite thorough scrubbing, felt out of place on the gleaming conference table. "All right, everyone," the trainer announced. "Today's exercise is about ethical leadership. You'll each face a scenario where profit conflicts with principle. Show us how you'd handle it." One by one, the trainees gave textbook answers about maximizing shareholder value while maintaining corporate responsibility. When Ethan's turn came, he cleared his throat nervously. "Well, "Ma'am," he began, his voice quiet but steady. "I've been fixing cars for 15 years. Sometimes customers come in, and I could easily charge them for work they don't need. But I always tell them the truth, even if it means less money for me. Because at the end of the day, I have to look my daughter in the eye and know I did right by people." The room fell silent. The trainer blinked, then smiled warmly. "That's exactly what we're looking for, Mr. Miller. Real integrity isn't about policies. It's about choices we make when nobody's watching." During the lunch break, other trainees gathered around Ethan's table, asking about his experiences. He shared stories about rebuilding trust with customers after they'd been burned by dishonest mechanics, about training young apprentices to value their reputation above quick profits. His simple wisdom cut through corporate jargon like a fresh breeze. Later that afternoon, Mr. Weston stopped by to observe. During a team exercise, he watched as Ethan naturally took the lead, not by dominating, but by listening and bringing out the best in others. The CEO pulled him aside afterward. "You know, Ethan," Weston said, his eyes twinkling, "some people think leadership is about having all the answers. But real leadership? It's about having the right questions and the courage to be honest. You've got that in spades." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Sir, I'm just trying to do right by people, like I always have." "Exactly," Weston smiled. "That's why you're here. Keep being yourself. That's what we need more of." At pickup time, Lily bounced out of school, clutching a handful of papers. "Daddy, look what I drew." She thrust them proudly into his hands as they walked home. The first picture showed a tall figure in what appeared to be a suit standing behind a desk. A smaller figure with pigtails stood nearby, both wearing huge smiles. In wobbly letters across the top, Lily had written, "My daddy the boss." "See?" Lily pointed excitedly. "That's you in your new clothes, and that's me visiting your office. Mrs. Henderson helped me spell executive." Ethan's throat tightened as he flipped through more drawings. Each one showed him in different leadership roles, teaching others, helping customers, even one where he appeared to be giving a speech. His daughter's unshakable faith in him brought tears to his eyes. From across the schoolyard, Karen watched their interaction, her lips pressed into a thin line. She clutched her designer handbag tighter, knuckles white with tension. The sight of Ethan in clean clothes, standing taller, smiling more freely, made her stomach churn. She'd heard whispers about his success in the training program, how even the CEO had taken notice. "Everything okay, Mom?" her son asked, noticing her scowl. "Just fine, honey," she said through clenched teeth, watching Ethan and Lily disappear around the corner. Just fine. That evening, Ethan's tiny kitchen filled with the sound of bubbling sauce and childish giggles. Lily stood on a chair beside the stove, wearing her mother's old apron tied twice around her small frame. "Okay, Chef Lily," Ethan said solemnly, though his eyes danced with amusement. "What's next in our super special spaghetti recipe?" Lily consulted the handwritten recipe card, her tongue poking out in concentration. "It says, add the secret ingredient." "Ah, yes, the secret ingredient." Ethan reached into the cupboard and pulled out a small container of cinnamon, Sarah's special touch that had always made her sauce unique. "Would you like to do the honors?" Lily carefully sprinkled a tiny amount into the sauce, just as her mother had taught Ethan years ago. The familiar scent filled the kitchen, bringing warm memories of family dinners past. "Now we stir 3 times and make a wish," Lily declared, gripping the wooden spoon with both hands. Ethan stood behind her, his hands covering hers, helping her stir the thick sauce. "What did you wish for?" he asked, though he knew the answer. It was the same every time. "Can't tell," Lily giggled. "But I think it's already coming true." Ethan lifted her down from the chair, and she immediately began setting their small table with the mismatched plates they'd collected from thrift stores over the years. Each one had a story, and Lily knew them all. "The blue one is from when we had no money, but you still bought me ice cream," she said, placing it carefully on the table. "And this one is from when Mrs. Henderson gave us her extra dishes because she said they needed a home with love in it." As they sat down to eat, Ethan realized this was the first time in weeks they'd both laughed so freely. The stress of social services, Karen's rumors, and his training program seemed to melt away in the warmth of their tiny kitchen, with its bubbling pot of sauce and daughter's radiant smile. "Daddy," Lily said between bites, red sauce dotting her chin, "this is the best spaghetti ever." "That's because you helped make it, sweetheart," Ethan replied, reaching over to wipe her face with a napkin. "Everything's better when we do it together." The simple meal, the familiar routine, the sound of his daughter's laughter, it was enough. More than enough. In that moment, Ethan felt rich beyond measure, despite the bills piling up on his counter and the challenges that awaited tomorrow. They had each other, and they had hope. Sometimes, that was all anyone really needed. The afternoon sun streamed through the training room windows, casting long shadows across the presentation boards. Ethan stood at the front, his hands steady despite his racing heart. He'd traded his usual work clothes for a pressed blue shirt Mrs. Henderson had helped him iron the night before. "In my experience at the garage," Ethan began, his voice quiet but clear, "I've learned that treating people right isn't just good business, it's about human dignity." He gestured to his simple drawings on the board, showing a workflow chart that put employees first. The other trainees, who had initially viewed the mechanic with skepticism, leaned forward in their chairs. Even Mr. Thompson, the stern-faced instructor, set down his pen to listen. "When someone brings their car in," Ethan continued, warming to his subject, "they're trusting us with something important to them. It's the same with employees. They're trusting us with their time, their hopes, their ability to provide for their families." His fingers traced the chart. "If we honor that trust with fair schedules, honest communication, and real respect, they'll give their best in return." A young woman in the front row nodded enthusiastically, jotting notes. Ethan's simple wisdom, born from years of honest work, resonated in a way that textbook theories never had. "Take Janet, who works the early shift at my garage," he said, his voice growing more confident. "She's a single mom too. By adjusting her hours slightly, she can get her kids to school without stress. That small change made her our most reliable employee." He smiled, remembering her gratitude. "It costs us nothing to be kind, but the returns are priceless." When he finished, the room erupted in genuine applause. Mr. Thompson stood up, his usual frown replaced by an approving smile. "Mr. Miller, that was exceptional. You've shown us that leadership isn't about fancy degrees, it's about understanding people." During the afternoon break, Ethan found himself surrounded by colleagues. Sarah from accounting touched his arm. "Your ideas about flexible scheduling, they could really help my department. Would you mind sharing more details?" James, a young supervisor, chimed in. "Man, I wish my old boss had thought like you. Mind if I use some of your suggestions?" The attention made Ethan uncomfortable, but he remembered Mrs. Henderson's words about not hiding his light. He answered their questions patiently, sharing practical examples from his years of working with all kinds of people. Near the end of the day, he spotted a familiar figure in the doorway. Mrs. Henderson stood there, her kind eyes twinkling with pride. She'd come straight from her volunteer work at the church food bank, still wearing her apron with the cross stitched on the pocket. "I hope you don't mind," she said, pulling him aside. "I wanted to see you in action." She squeezed his arm. "The Lord has given you a gift, Ethan. You speak from the heart, and people listen." Ethan shuffled his feet. "I just shared what I know from the garage, and that's exactly why it works," she insisted. "You're not putting on airs. You're showing them real leadership, the kind that comes from walking in others' shoes." She looked him straight in the eye. "This is only the beginning, dear. The Lord has plans for you." As the training room emptied, Mr. Thompson approached with a thick folder. "Miller, corporate wants to see your presentation. They're interested in implementing your ideas across several stores." He patted Ethan's shoulder. "Keep this up, and you'll go far." Later that evening, Ethan walked home with Lily, their shadows long in the setting Sunday. She skipped beside him, clutching a drawing she'd made during the after-school program. "Did you teach the grown-ups good things today, Daddy?" she asked, her pigtails bouncing. Ethan smiled, remembering the day's unexpected success. "I tried my best, sweetie. Mrs. Henderson said you were going to be a super good boss," Lily declared, twirling. She said you have a servant's heart, whatever that means. Above them, the first stars began to appear in the deepening blue sky. Ethan watched his daughter dance ahead, her joy uninhibited. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine more than just survival. He pictured a future where Lily could have new shoes without worry, where they could help others who struggled like they had. "Look, Daddy," Lily pointed upward, "the stars are coming out." They paused on the sidewalk, hands joined, faces turned to the emerging constellations. The evening air was sweet with blooming honeysuckle from Mrs. Henderson's garden as they passed her house. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell chimed softly. "You know what, sweetheart?" Ethan said, squeezing her small hand. "I think tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day." Lily beamed up at him, her faith in him as constant as the stars above. Together, they walked toward home, their steps light with new possibility. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elegant table settings. Ethan Miller tugged at his borrowed tie, feeling out of place among the sea of executives in their tailored suits. Lily sat beside him in her best dress. A thrift store find that Mrs. Henderson had lovingly altered, her small hand clutching his beneath the white tablecloth. "You okay, Daddy?" she whispered, noticing his nervous fidgeting. Ethan managed a smile. "Just fine, kiddo." But his stomach churned as he watched Mr. Weston approach the podium for his keynote address. The quarterly company banquet was bigger than anything Ethan had ever attended, with hundreds of employees filling the vast room. Mr. Weston's voice carried clearly through the speakers. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our company's success, but the spirit that drives us forward." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd before settling on Ethan's table. "And speaking of spirit, I'd like to introduce someone special." Ethan's heart stopped as Weston continued. "Ethan Miller, would you join me up here? Share your story with us." The room fell silent. Lily squeezed his hand harder, her face glowing with pride. Mrs. Henderson, seated at their table, gave him an encouraging nod. "God doesn't give us more than we can handle," she whispered. On trembling legs, Ethan made his way to the podium. The spotlight felt hot on his face, and hundreds of curious eyes followed his movement. His work-roughened hands gripped the wooden lectern. He started, his voice catching. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Most of you probably know me as the mechanic who joined the management program." A few kind chuckles rippled through the audience. "Truth is, 3 months ago, I never imagined standing here." Ethan's eyes found Lily's in the crowd, and suddenly the words began to flow more naturally. "I lost my wife Sarah when our daughter was just 2. The grief nearly broke me, but I had this beautiful little girl who needed her daddy to be strong." His voice softened with emotion. "Some days, I didn't know how we'd make it. The bills piled up, and people, well, they look at a grease-stained single dad and make assumptions." The room grew still, every person leaning in to catch his words. "I remember standing in that department store, humiliated, with my daughter watching." He saw Karen shift uncomfortably at a distant table. "But that moment changed everything, because someone chose to see past my appearance to my worth as a human being." Tears glistened in many eyes now, including Mr. Weston's. "What I've learned in this program isn't just about business, it's about dignity. Every person who walks through our doors, whether customer or employee, deserves to be treated with respect." Ethan's voice grew stronger, because you never know what battles they're fighting, what dreams they're carrying, or who's counting on them to come home and be a hero. He gestured toward Lily, who was beaming through her own tears. "My daughter taught me that real strength isn't about power or position. It's about getting up every morning and trying your best, even when the world tells you you're not enough." The emotion in the room was palpable as Ethan continued. "I stand here today because people like Mr. Weston and Mrs. Henderson believed in me. But mostly, I stand here because every night my little girl looks at me like I can move mountains." His voice cracked slightly. "And that faith, her faith, God's faith, and finally my own faith in myself, that's what transforms a mechanic into a leader." As Ethan finished speaking, the silence held for a moment. Then, Like a wave, the audience rose to their feet. The applause thundered through the ballroom, accompanied by cheers and more than a few sniffles. Lily bounced in her seat, pointing at him and declaring proudly to everyone nearby, "That's my dad." Mr. Weston approached the podium, embracing Ethan with tears in his eyes. "That, ladies and gentlemen," he announced over the continuing applause, "is what our company stands for." Ethan made his way back to his table, his heart full to bursting. Lily launched herself into his arms, and he lifted her high, not caring about the expensive surroundings or watching eyes. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, whispering, "The Lord works in mysterious ways." The applause continued as Weston came to their table, placing a strong hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Well done, son," he said proudly. "Well done indeed." Ethan held Lily close, feeling the weight of the moment. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt truly victorious. Not because of the acclaim, but because he'd finally found the courage to stand tall and speak his truth. In his daughter's shining eyes, he saw everything that mattered: love, pride, and the unshakable bond between a father and his child. The kitchen smelled of mac and cheese, Lily's favorite comfort food. Ethan stirred the pot while humming off-key, trying to keep his spirits up despite the constant worry gnawing at his stomach. Through the small window above the sink, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, casting long shadows across their modest living room. "Almost ready, kiddo," he called out, watching Lily at the coffee table, her colored pencils scattered around her latest masterpiece. She looked up with that smile that always melted his heart, the one that reminded him so much of her mother. "Can I put extra cheese on mine, Daddy?" Lily asked, her pigtails bobbing as she added final touches to her drawing. "You bet, Princess, just like Mom used to make it." Ethan reached for the extra bag of shredded cheese when 3 sharp knocks echoed through their small house. The sound was official, demanding nothing like Mrs. Henderson's gentle tapping or the friendly knock of neighbors. His hand froze mid-reach. Something about those knocks sent a chill down his spine. Lily must have felt it too, because she stopped coloring and looked up at him with wide eyes. "Stay there, sweetie," Ethan said softly, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His work boots felt heavy as he walked to the door, each step seeming to take forever. When he opened it, his heart sank. 2 women in business attire stood on his porch, their expressions professionally neutral. One held a leather portfolio, the other a thick manila envelope. But it was the sheriff's deputy, standing behind them, that made Ethan's blood run cold. "Mr. Miller?" the taller woman asked, though it wasn't really a question. "I'm Miss Thompson from Child Protective Services, and this is my colleague, Miss Rodriguez. May we come in?" Ethan's throat went dry. What's this about? He already knew, but he needed to hear it, needed time to process what was happening. "Sir, we have some urgent matters to discuss regarding your daughter's welfare. Please, it's better if we talk inside." He stepped back mechanically, his movements stiff and unnatural. As they entered, Lily scrambled up from her spot by the coffee table, clutching her drawing to her chest like a shield. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. "It's okay, baby," he said, though nothing felt okay. The social workers settled onto their worn couch while the deputy remained by the door, a silent reminder of authority. Miss Thompson opened her portfolio. "Mr. Miller, we've received multiple concerning reports about Lily's home situation. Given the severity of these allegations, we're required to take immediate action." "What allegations?" Ethan's voice cracked. "I work hard. I take care of my daughter. Ask anyone." "Sir," Miss Rodriguez interrupted, pulling papers from the manila envelope, "we have documented concerns about financial instability, possible neglect, and questions about your ability to provide adequate care while working such long hours." Ethan's mind raced to Karen's smirking face at school pickup, her whispered conversations with other parents. This was her revenge, carefully orchestrated to hurt him where it would cut deepest. "Those are lies," he said, his voice rising. "I'm in a management training program. Things are getting better. Please, just let me explain." "Daddy?" Lily's small voice cut through the tension. She had moved closer, sensing the adult's stress. "What's wrong?" Miss Thompson's voice softened slightly as she addressed Lily. "Sweetheart, You're going to stay with a nice family for a little while until we can sort some things out." "No." Lily's cry pierced the air as she dropped her drawing and ran to Ethan, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Daddy, don't let them take me!" Ethan's hands shook as he held her. "This isn't right. You can't just—" "Mr. Miller," Miss Rodriguez stood, holding out the papers. "This is a temporary custody order. We need you to comply." "Please," he begged, feeling tears well up in his eyes. "She's all I have. She needs me." The deputy stepped forward. "Sir, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Lily's grip tightened as she sobbed into Ethan's shirt. "Daddy, please. I'll be good, I promise. Don't let them take me away." Ethan knelt down, his heart shattering as he looked into his daughter's tear-stained face. "Listen to me, Princess. I love you so much. This is just temporary, okay? Daddy's going to fix this, I promise." Miss Thompson approached carefully. "Lily, honey, we need to go now. You can pack some of your favorite things." "No!" Lily screamed, clinging tighter to Ethan. "I want to stay with Daddy." The next few minutes were a blur of tears and desperate pleas. Miss Rodriguez gathered some of Lily's clothes and her favorite stuffed rabbit, while Miss Thompson tried to gently pry her away from Ethan. The mac and cheese on the stove had long since burned, filling the house with an acrid smell that mixed with the salty scent of tears. "I love you, baby girl," Ethan choked out as Lily was finally pulled from his arms. "Be brave for me, okay? Like Mom always said." Lily reached for him as Miss Thompson led her to the door, her small voice breaking with sobs. "Daddy, please, Daddy, I want to stay, please." The sound of her cries echoed down the walkway as they led her to a waiting car. Ethan stumbled to his doorway, his legs giving out beneath him as he watched them drive away with his whole world. He collapsed against the doorframe, his grease-stained hands covering his face as tears streaked through the day's dirt and oil. The setting sun cast long shadows across his crumpled form, and somewhere in the kitchen the burned pot continued to smoke, filling the empty house with the bitter smell of dreams turned to ash. Author's note: the scene ends here as per instructions, with Ethan collapsed in his doorway, tears streaking his grease-stained face, following the exact ending specified in the prompt. The empty house echoed with silence. Dishes piled in the sink, untouched for days. On the kitchen table, Mrs. Henderson's casseroles sat cold and forgotten, wrapped in aluminum foil. Ethan hadn't eaten more than a few bites since they took Lily away. He sat in her bedroom, surrounded by stuffed animals and crayon drawings. Her favorite teddy bear lay on the pillow where she'd left it. Dark circles hung under his eyes, his normally neat beard now unkempt. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from the garage, customers wondering why their cars weren't ready. He couldn't bring himself to care. The morning light filtered through pink curtains, casting shadows on the wall where Lily's height measurements marked her growth. Ethan traced them with trembling fingers, remembering how proud she'd been just last month when she'd grown another inch. A gentle knock at the front door broke through his fog. He ignored it, but it came again, more insistent this time. "Ethan Miller, I know you're in there." "Mrs." Henderson's voice called out. "Don't make an old lady stand out here all day." Reluctantly, he dragged himself to the door. Mrs. Henderson stood there, holding another casserole and her worn Bible. Her eyes softened at his appearance, but she didn't comment on it. Instead, she walked right past him, into the kitchen. "This won't do at all," she said, setting down her dishes and opening the curtains. Sunlight streamed in, making Ethan squint. "Sitting in the dark won't bring her home." "What else can I do?" His voice was hoarse from disuse. "They took my little girl." Mrs. Henderson pulled out a chair. "Sit," she commanded. When he did, she opened her Bible to a marked page. "Listen to this. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Ethan stared at his hands. "I don't feel very strong right now." "Strength isn't about feeling," she said firmly. "It's about getting up when you're knocked down. And right now, your daughter needs you to get up." She moved around the kitchen, washing dishes and putting away old food. "You're a good father, Ethan Miller. I've watched you with that child. The way you braid her hair every morning, even though your fingers are better suited to fixing engines. The way you read to her every night, no matter how tired you are." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "But what if it's not enough?" "It is enough. You are enough." Mrs. Henderson's voice was gentle but firm. "But you need to fight. Show them what I see, what Lily sees." The afternoon brought another visitor. Mr. Weston's expensive car looked out of place in front of Ethan's modest home. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a determined expression. "The company's legal team is at your disposal," Weston announced, spreading papers across the kitchen table. "We've been gathering character references from your colleagues in the training program. Everyone wants to help." Ethan looked at the stack of letters, overwhelmed. "Why would you do this?" "Because I know a good man when I see one," Weston replied, "and because that little girl deserves to come home to her father." As the sun began to set, Ethan found himself alone again. But something had shifted. He showered for the first time in days, trimmed his beard. In the living room, he lit a candle next to Lily's school photo, the one where her smile lit up her whole face. His fingers traced the frame. "I'll bring you home," he whispered, his voice stronger now. "I promise." The garage keys felt heavy in his hand. He knew he needed to return tomorrow, face the backlog of work. Mrs. Henderson was right. Hiding wouldn't help Lily. He needed to show everyone, especially the court, that he was capable and strong. On the kitchen counter, Mrs. Henderson had left a note. "Remember who you are. A father's love is stronger than any obstacle." Beside it lay the business card of the company's lawyer, Weston's personal number scrawled on the back. The support surrounded him like a warm blanket, chasing away some of the cold loneliness. For the first time in days, Ethan felt hunger gnaw at his stomach. He warmed up a plate of Mrs. Henderson's casserole, forcing himself to eat. His body needed strength for the fight ahead. In Lily's room, he straightened her stuffed animals and smoothed her bedspread. The space felt less like a shrine now, more like a room waiting for its owner to return. Her drawings still covered the walls, stick figures of herself and Daddy holding hands, hearts floating above them. The candle's flame cast dancing shadows as Ethan sat in his chair, no longer drowning in despair, but filled with quiet determination. His daughter's photo smiled at him, reminding him of everything worth fighting for. Mrs. Henderson's worn Bible lay open on Ethan Miller's kitchen table, its pages marked with dozens of colorful sticky notes. Next to it sat a stack of letters from church members, each envelope carefully sealed with words of support inside. Mr. Weston's polished briefcase looked out of place among the modest furnishings, but his presence filled the small room with quiet authority. "Son," Mrs. Henderson said, her weathered hand smoothing out a wrinkled letter, "every single person at church wants to help. Even old Mr. Jenkins, who hardly speaks to anyone, wrote 3 pages about what a good father you are." Ethan's shoulders hunched as he stared at his coffee cup. The dark circles under his eyes testified to sleepless nights without Lily. "I don't deserve all this," he mumbled. "That's exactly the kind of talk we need to work on," Mr. Weston said firmly. He pulled out a notepad and pen. "The judge needs to see your confidence, your capability." His commanding voice softened. "The same strength I saw that day in the store." "Mrs." Henderson reached across the table and squeezed Ethan's grease-stained hand. "The Lord didn't give you a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Remember that, Ethan." Ethan's voice cracked. "I keep thinking about her alone in that foster home. She must be so scared." "Then let's channel that worry into preparation," Weston said. He straightened his tie and leaned forward. "When I testify about your performance in the management program, I'll emphasize your dedication, your integrity. But you need to show the judge who you really are." Mrs. Henderson pulled out more papers from her worn canvas bag. "I've got references from Lily's Sunday school teacher, the grocery store owner, even her pediatrician. They all see what we see, Ethan. A father who'd move mountains for his little girl." For the next hour, they practiced. Weston asked tough questions while Mrs. Henderson took notes. Each time Ethan started to slouch or mumble, they gently corrected him. Slowly, his responses grew stronger. "Look them in the eye," Weston coached. Tell them about working double shifts to buy Lily's school supplies, about reading her bedtime stories even after 14-hour workdays. And don't forget to mention how you've never missed a parent-teacher conference, Mrs. Henderson added, how you pack her lunch every morning with little notes inside. Ethan stood by the kitchen window, watching leaves scatter across the yard where Lily's jump rope still hung on the fence. "I just want her home," he whispered. "Then, let's make sure they see the real you," Weston said, standing beside him. "Not Karen's lies. Not their prejudices about single fathers or mechanics. Show them the man who's never given up, no matter how hard things got." The afternoon wore on. More church members dropped by, bringing casseroles and cards. Old Mrs. Wilson from 2 houses down brought a thick manila envelope filled with photos she'd taken of Ethan and Lily at neighborhood cookouts. Mr. Chen from the corner store arrived with a handwritten letter about how Ethan always helped him unload heavy deliveries, never asking for anything in return. "See?" Mrs. Henderson smiled, adding the items to their growing collection. "You've touched more lives than you knew." As the sun began to set, Weston reviewed their strategy one final time. "Remember, steady voice, clear answers. You're not just some mechanic begging for mercy. You're a father fighting for his child. Own that truth." They practiced his walk, his posture, even his handshake. Mrs. Henderson adjusted his tie, a borrowed one from her late husband, while murmuring prayers under her breath. Ethan felt the weight of their belief in him, heavy but somehow lifting him up at the same time. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Ethan stood before his bathroom mirror. The borrowed tie knotted perfectly, thanks to Mr. Weston's patient instruction the day before. His work-roughened hands trembled slightly as he smoothed down his freshly pressed shirt, another gift from the community. Mrs. Henderson arrived early, a thermal mug of coffee in one hand and her Bible in the other. "Ready?" she asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders the way they'd practiced. In his pocket, he touched the small photo of Lily he always carried. "Ready." They drove to the courthouse in Mr. Weston's car, the CEO himself at the wheel. The building loomed ahead, its stone steps crowded with early morning activity. Ethan spotted Karen near the entrance, wearing an expensive suit and a smug expression. But this time, her presence didn't make him shrink. He thought of Lily, of her brave smile, even on the hardest days. He thought of his community's faith in him, of Mrs. Henderson's prayers, and Mr. Weston's unwavering support. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, Ethan paused. Mrs. Henderson squeezed his arm, and Mr. Weston gave him an encouraging nod. The morning sun caught the silver in Mrs. Henderson's hair as she whispered, "The Lord goes before you." Ethan Miller squared his shoulders, lifted his chin, and took the first step toward the courthouse doors. He carried with him not just hope, but the strength of an entire community. For the first time since they'd taken Lily, he felt truly ready to fight. The heavy wooden doors loomed before him. Beyond them lay the first hearing, the beginning of his battle to bring his daughter home. Ethan reached for the handle, his mechanic's hands steady now with purpose. He was no longer just a struggling single father. He was a man surrounded by support, armed with truth, and filled with love for his little girl. He pulled open the door and stepped inside. The wooden doors of Courtroom B creaked open, and Ethan Miller's heart pounded as he stepped inside. The polished benches and towering judge's podium made him feel small, like a child himself. His hands, rough from years of mechanical work, fidgeted with his borrowed tie, a dark blue one that Mr. Weston had loaned him for the hearing. Karen sat in the front row, her designer blazer pristine and her smile cold as winter frost. She whispered to her lawyer, shooting triumphant glances in Ethan's direction. The sight of her made his stomach churn, but he remembered Mrs. Henderson's words from that morning, "Stand tall in your truth, dear." The bailiff's voice boomed through the chamber. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Martha Reynolds presiding." Judge Reynolds, a woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, took her seat and surveyed the room. "Be seated. We're here today regarding the custody evaluation of Lily Miller. Let's proceed." Karen's lawyer called her to the stand first. She glided to the witness box, arranging herself perfectly, like an actress taking center stage. "Mrs. Warner," her lawyer began, "please tell the court about your concerns regarding Mr. Miller's fitness as a parent." Karen's practiced smile emerged. "I've observed Mr. Miller for months now. His daughter often comes to school in patched clothes. He works long, irregular hours at that dirty garage." The child practically raises herself. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Just last month, I saw him yelling at her in the parking lot." Ethan's hands clenched. That day, he'd called out to warn Lily about a backing car. But Karen twisted everything she saw. "He can barely afford basic necessities," Karen continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. "And his emotional state? So unstable. One minute he's a mechanic, the next he's trying to play businessman. The poor child needs consistency." Ethan's lawyer, a public defender named David Chen, rose for cross-examination. "Mrs. Warner, isn't it true that you had a public altercation with my client at your workplace?" Karen's smile faltered slightly. "A minor misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that resulted in your formal reprimand and required public apology, correct?" Color rose in Karen's cheeks. "That's irrelevant to his parenting." When it was Ethan's turn to testify, his work boots felt heavy as he walked to the stand. The oath to tell the truth steadied him. Truth was something he understood. "Mr. Miller," his lawyer began, "please describe your daily routine with Lily." Ethan's voice came out quiet but clear. "I wake up at 5:30 every morning to pack her lunch and iron her clothes. We have breakfast together. She likes her toast cut diagonal." He smiled slightly at the memory. "I arrange my work schedule around her school hours. Every night, we read together before bed, even if I'm tired from the garage." "And your financial situation?" "I'm not rich," Ethan admitted. "But Lily has never gone hungry. I budget carefully, save where I can. The management training program Mr. Weston offered means better opportunities ahead." Mr. Weston's testimony came next. The CEO's commanding presence filled the courtroom as he took the stand, his expensive suit a stark contrast to Ethan's modest attire. "Mr. Miller represents everything our company values," Weston declared. "His integrity, work ethic, and leadership potential are exceptional. In just weeks, he's earned the respect of every colleague. When I witnessed him handle public humiliation with dignity, I knew he was someone special." Mrs. Henderson followed, her grandmother's warmth softening the courtroom's stern atmosphere. She smoothed her floral dress as she settled into the witness chair. "I've known many parents in my 40 years of teaching," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Ethan Miller is one of the finest. He attends every school event, helps with homework, and puts Lily's needs before his own. That child's eyes light up whenever she speaks of her daddy." She pulled out a folder of Lily's drawings. "These are from our Sunday school class. Every picture shows her and her father together, at the park, reading books, fixing cars. That's not a child who's neglected, that's a child who knows she's loved." The judge studied the drawings, her expression unreadable. "While these testimonies are compelling," she said finally, "I need more concrete evidence regarding Mr. Miller's stability and resources. The court requires additional documentation of income, housing arrangements, and childcare plans." Ethan's heart sank. He'd brought every pay stub, every receipt, but somehow it wasn't enough. His eyes burned as he watched the judge make notes. "We'll reconvene next week," Judge Reynolds announced. "I expect full financial records and a detailed parenting plan. Court is adjourned." The sharp crack of the gavel made Ethan flinch. As people began filing out, Karen swept past him with a smirk, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Mr. Weston squeezed Ethan's shoulder supportively, while Mrs. Henderson whispered a quick prayer under her breath. But all Ethan could think about was another week without Lily, another week of her sleeping in a strange bed, another week of questions about whether his best would ever be good enough. He gathered his papers with trembling hands, wondering how many more documents it would take to prove what his heart already knew, that being Lily's father was the one thing in life he did exactly right. The morning sun filtered through the high courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor. Ethan sat at the defendant's table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had turned white. The past week of testimony had left him drained, but today was different. Lily would be here. When the side door opened and his daughter appeared, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Lily wore the blue dress Mrs. Henderson had helped pick out, her hair tied back with matching ribbons. Though small against the towering backdrop of the courtroom, she walked with surprising steadiness, her chin held high, just like he'd taught her. The judge leaned forward, her stern expression softening slightly as she addressed Lily. "Hello, young lady. Do you understand why you're here today?" Lily nodded, her hands smoothing her dress just like her mother used to do when nervous. "Yes, ma'am. It's about my daddy. And do you understand the importance of telling the truth in this courtroom?" "Yes, ma'am," Lily replied clearly. "Daddy always says lies hurt people's hearts." A few quiet chuckles rippled through the gallery. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the wooden barrier. The judge smiled gently. "Very well. Would you like to tell us about your father?" Lily's eyes found Ethan's across the room, and he tried to pour all his love and strength into that single look. She straightened her shoulders and spoke with a child's pure conviction. "My daddy works really hard fixing cars. His hands get dirty, but his heart is clean." She paused, then added with quiet certainty, "And Mommy says you're my daddy." The words hung in the air like a bell's clear tone. In the gallery, Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Your mother?" the judge asked carefully. "You mean before she passed away?" "Yes, ma'am." Lily turned to Mrs. Henderson, who now approached with a small wooden box. "She left letters with Grandma H. She told me about them last night." The judge motioned for the bailiff to collect the box. Inside were several envelopes, each dated and sealed. The first was addressed simply, "To whom it may concern, about my husband Ethan." As the judge began reading, Mrs. Henderson took the stand to explain. "Sarah, Lily's mother, gave these to me 2 weeks before she passed. She knew her time was short and wanted to make sure there would always be proof of Ethan's devotion as a father." The judge opened the first letter, and Sarah's words filled the hushed courtroom. "If you're reading this, it means someone has questioned my husband's ability to raise our daughter. Let me be clear. There is no man more worthy of being Lily's father than Ethan Miller. He may not have wealth or status, but he has given every breath to being the best father possible." Ethan's vision blurred with tears as his late wife's words continued. She described nights he'd stayed up with a colicky baby while still working full days. How he'd learned to braid hair and sew patches on clothes. The way he'd read stories in funny voices until Lily fell asleep. In the gallery, several people were openly crying. Even the court reporter paused to wipe her eyes. Karen's face had lost its smug certainty, replaced by a sickly pallor. The judge read through 3 more letters, each one painting a portrait of a man who had poured his entire being into fatherhood. The final letter was addressed to Lily herself, to be read, "If anyone ever tries to take you from your daddy." Lily stood straighter as the judge read her mother's last words to her. "My darling girl, your daddy's hands may be rough from honest work, but they have never held anything more gently than you. Trust in his love. It's the purest thing I've ever known." Karen's lawyer tried to object, claiming the letters were emotional manipulation, but the judge silently held up her hand, silencing him. "Mrs. Peterson," the judge addressed Karen sharply, "would you care to explain why you felt it necessary to make allegations against Mr. Miller's fitness as a parent?" Karen's composure cracked. Her voice came out reedy and thin. I was just concerned about the child's welfare, living in that tiny house, with a father who works such long hours." "From what I've seen," the judge interrupted, "Mr. Miller works those hours to provide for his daughter, and that tiny house is filled with more love than many mansions." She glanced at her notes. "You initiated complaints to social services after Mr. Miller received a promotion opportunity that you felt he didn't deserve. Is that correct?" Karen's face flushed red. She stammered but couldn't form a response. The judge turned back to Lily, who still stood tall despite her obvious fatigue. "Thank you, young lady. You may step down now." Lily didn't move toward the gallery. Instead, she looked at the judge with clear eyes. "May I please hug my daddy now?" The judge's stern facade cracked into a warm smile. Yes, you may. Ethan met Lily halfway down the aisle, scooping her into his arms as she threw herself at him. He buried his face in her hair, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small arms tight around his neck. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. "I love you too, baby girl," he managed through his tears. "So much." The judge cleared her throat. "I'll review all testimony and evidence presented. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 for my decision." She looked directly at Ethan and Lily, still wrapped in their embrace. "Mr. Miller, I believe it would be appropriate for your daughter to remain with you tonight, under standard supervision protocols." The gallery burst into soft applause as Ethan hugged Lily tighter, his shoulders shaking with relief. Mrs. Henderson beamed from her seat, while Mr. Weston nodded approvingly. Karen gathered her things quickly and fled the courtroom, but nobody paid her any attention. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. Tomorrow would bring the final decision, but for now, his daughter was back in his arms where she belonged. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harrison adjusted her glasses, studying the papers before her. Ethan's heart thundered in his chest. 2 rows behind him, Mrs. Henderson clasped her hands in silent prayer, while Mr. Weston sat straight-backed and resolute beside her. Having reviewed all testimony and evidence presented, Judge Harrison began, her voice carrying through the hushed room. Including character witnesses, employment records, and most notably, the letters from the late Mrs. Miller, this court has reached its decision. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Across the aisle, Karen shifted in her seat, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face for the first time. "It is the finding of this court that the allegations against Mr. Blank, Ethan Miller, are not only unsubstantiated, but appear to be maliciously motivated." The judge's stern gaze fell on Karen, who seemed to shrink in her chair. "Mr. Miller has demonstrated exceptional dedication as a single father, maintaining steady employment while pursuing advancement opportunities, and most importantly, providing a loving, stable home for his daughter." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as the judge continued. "Furthermore, the evidence shows that Mr. Miller has consistently put his daughter's needs before his own, even in the face of financial hardship and social prejudice. The letters from his late wife paint a picture of a man who embodies the very essence of responsible parenthood." The judge's voice hardened as she addressed Karen directly. "As for the complainant, this court strongly condemns the filing of false reports and the deliberate attempt to separate a child from a loving parent. Miss Karen Thompson, you are hereby ordered to cease all harassment and interference with the Miller family." Turning back to her papers, Judge Harrison's voice softened slightly. "It is therefore the order of this court that full custody of Lily Miller be immediately restored to her father, Ethan Miller, with all previous restrictions lifted." The bang of the gavel seemed to break a dam of emotion in the courtroom. Applause erupted, starting with Mrs. Henderson and quickly spreading through the entire room. Lily, who had been sitting with a social worker near the front, jumped to her feet with a cry of pure joy. "Daddy!" she shouted, breaking into a run. Ethan dropped to one knee, catching her as she flew into his arms. He lifted her up, spinning her around as tears streamed down both their faces. "My baby girl," he whispered, holding her close. "My precious girl." The applause continued as people stood, many wiping their eyes at the sight of father and daughter reunited. Karen slipped quietly toward the exit, her face burning with shame, but few noticed her departure. Mr. Weston stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Your Honor," he addressed the judge, his voice carrying naturally through the room. "As CEO of Weston Department Stores, I'd like to make a statement for the record." Judge Harrison nodded her permission, and Weston continued. "Ethan Miller represents everything our company stands for: integrity, perseverance, and genuine leadership. We are not only proud to have him in our management program, but are announcing his promotion to assistant store manager, effective immediately." A fresh wave of applause swept through the courtroom. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, beaming with pride. "Thank you, Mr. Weston," Judge Harrison said, allowing a small smile. "Mr. Miller, this court wishes you and your daughter all the best. Court is adjourned. As people began filing out of the courtroom, well-wishers surrounded Ethan and Lily. Mrs. Henderson hugged them both, whispering, "The Lord is good, dear ones. He is so good." The autumn sunshine felt especially warm as they stepped outside the courthouse. Yellow leaves danced across the steps, and the air held the crisp promise of new beginnings. Ethan's co-workers from the garage had gathered outside, along with several of Lily's teachers and classmates who had come to show support. Finding a quiet moment among the celebration, Ethan knelt down on the courthouse steps, bringing himself eye-level with his daughter. Lily's face was glowing, her eyes bright with happiness and relief. "We did it," he whispered, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. His voice was thick with emotion, but his smile reached his eyes, something Lily hadn't seen in weeks. Lily threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. "I knew you would, Daddy," she said with complete faith. "I knew you'd bring me home." Around them, their impromptu support family created a protective circle. Mrs. Henderson, with her quiet prayers of thanksgiving, Mr. Weston standing tall and satisfied, garage workers in their oil-stained uniforms, and teachers who had seen past the rumors to the truth of Ethan's character. The courthouse steps had never seen a sweeter victory, nor a more perfect moment between father and daughter. Their journey wasn't over, there would still be bills to pay and challenges to face, but they would face them together, their bond stronger than ever. "Mr. Miller," a reporter from the local paper called out, "how does it feel to have won?" Ethan stood, keeping Lily's hand firmly in his. He looked down at his daughter's trusting face, then back at the reporter. "There was never anything to win," he said quietly. "Just something precious to protect." The morning sun cast long shadows across the freshly painted storefront as Ethan Miller adjusted his tie in the reflection of the gleaming windows. The crisp navy suit felt different from his old mechanic's uniform, but his hands, rough and marked with years of honest work, remained the same. He had decided early on not to hide these badges of his journey with fancy lotions or treatments. These hands had raised Lily, fixed countless engines, and now would guide a new chapter in their lives. Inside the soon-to-open department store, employees bustled about, making final preparations. The floors sparkled, racks stood perfectly arranged, and the air hummed with excitement. Ethan walked through the aisles, checking details and greeting his team with warm smiles and encouraging words. "Morning, Mr. Miller," called Sarah, a young cashier he'd hired last week. "The display windows look amazing." "Great work on those," Ethan replied, his voice carrying the same down-to-earth warmth it had when he worked in the garage. "And remember, it's just Ethan." The sound of running feet made him turn. Lily, wearing a pretty blue dress Mrs. Henderson had helped pick out, darted between the racks with a stack of grand opening flyers clutched to her chest. Her eyes sparkled with pride as she handed them to arriving guests. "Daddy," she called out, rushing over to hug him. "Mrs. Henderson is here." Sure enough, the elderly teacher made her way through the entrance, her face beaming. She wore her Sunday best, a floral dress and a small hat, looking every bit the proud grandmother she had become to them. "My goodness, Mrs. Henderson exclaimed, taking in the transformed space. "What a beautiful store, and look at you, Ethan, though I must say I'm glad to see you kept those honest hands of yours." Ethan smiled, glancing down at his scarred knuckles. "Couldn't hide these if I wanted to. They remind me where I came from." "And where God has led you," she added softly, squeezing his arm. More guests began arriving for the ceremony. Ethan's employees, his team, now moved with purpose and pride. He had made sure to hire several single parents, remembering his own struggles. They had formed a tight-knit community, supporting each other through challenges. "Mr. Miller," called Tom, a stock manager and single father of two, "the ribbon's ready whenever you are." Ethan nodded, feeling a flutter of nerves in his stomach. Public speaking still wasn't his favorite thing, but he'd learned to face it with the same quiet dignity that had carried him through harder times. A familiar voice cut through the growing crowd. "There's my star manager." Mr. Weston approached, looking distinguished as ever in his tailored suit. His warm handshake carried the same genuine respect it had shown that first day in the shoe department when he'd defended a grease-stained mechanic's dignity. "Sir," Ethan began, I can't thank you enough for none of that, Weston interrupted with a smile. You earned every bit of this through hard work and character, though I will take credit for recognizing a good man when I see one. Lily appeared again, this time offering Mr. Weston a flyer, with a small curtsy that made the CEO laugh heartily. And how's my favorite junior executive today? I helped Daddy pick all the colors for the children's department, she announced proudly. And excellent choices they were, Weston agreed, winking at Ethan. The crowd had grown considerable now, filling the store's main floor. Local business owners, community members, and even a few of Ethan's old garage customers had come to support him. He saw nothing but genuine smiles and encouragement in their faces, such a change from the judgmental stares of the past. Mrs. Henderson gathered Lily close as Ethan moved toward the front doors for the ceremony. His team lined up behind him, and he felt a surge of gratitude for their trust and dedication. The microphone felt heavy in his hand as he faced the crowd. But when he spoke, his voice carried clear and strong, just as it had in that courtroom months ago. Welcome, everyone. A year ago I was fixing engines and struggling to make ends meet as a single dad. Today I'm standing here because people chose to see beyond appearances and believe in second chances. He paused, finding Lily's bright eyes in the crowd. She gave him a thumbs up, making several people chuckle warmly. This store isn't just about selling merchandise. It's about creating a place where everyone is treated with dignity, where single parents can shop without judgment, and where honest work is valued above fancy appearances. Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. Ethan saw Mrs. Henderson dab at her eyes with a handkerchief. To my amazing team, he continued, gesturing to the employees behind him, thank you for your trust and hard work. To Mr. Weston, thank you for seeing potential in a grease-stained mechanic. To Mrs. Henderson, thank you for being our rock and showing us that faith moves mountains. His voice softened as he found Lily's face again. And to my daughter, who never stopped believing in her daddy, you're my reason for everything. The crowd erupted in applause as Ethan lifted the ceremonial scissors. Lily broke free from Mrs. Henderson and ran to join him, her small hands wrapping around his as they cut the ribbon together. Red silk fluttered to the ground as cheers filled the air. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment of triumph. Mr. Weston stepped forward to shake Ethan's hand as the doors officially opened, welcoming the first customers into the store. Standing there, surrounded by applause with Lily hugging his legs, Ethan felt the full weight of the journey they'd traveled. From that humiliating day in the shoe department to this moment of victory, every step had led here. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility, and for the first time in years, Ethan Miller felt completely, unshakably whole. The evening settled softly over their small home, painting the kitchen walls in warm amber hues. The modest dinner table, once a place of quiet worry, now hummed with life and contentment. Ethan and Lily sat across from each other, sharing a simple meal of chicken and vegetables, but the atmosphere felt richer than any fancy restaurant. Lily swung her legs under the table, her new shoes properly fitted, this time occasionally tapping against the chair legs. Her dark hair was neatly braided, thanks to Mrs. Henderson's patient teaching, and her eyes sparkled with a joy that had been missing during their separation. "Can you pass the peas, please?" Lily asked, adding a giggle. She'd been making up little rhymes all evening, riding the wave of happiness that seemed to fill their home. Ethan smiled, sliding the bowl toward her. His tie was loosened, and his sleeves were rolled up, but he still wore his new manager's suit with a quiet pride. The day's grand opening had been more successful than anyone expected, with customers filling the aisles and employees working together like a well-oiled machine. "Did you see how many people came today, Daddy?" Lily scooped a spoonful of peas onto her plate, carefully counting them as she always did. "And Mrs. Henderson brought cookies for everyone." "I saw," Ethan nodded, cutting into his chicken. "Those cookies disappeared faster than a summer rainstorm." He paused, watching his daughter arrange her peas in a perfect circle. These simple moments, just being together, meant more to him than all the promotions in the world. The kitchen window was open, letting in a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers from their small garden. They'd planted it together after returning from the courthouse victory, a symbol of their fresh start. Each bloom reminded Ethan of how far they'd come from those dark days when Lily had been taken away. "Daddy?" Lily's voice grew thoughtful as she finished arranging her peas. She looked up at him with those earnest eyes that always seemed to see straight into his soul. "Are we happy now?" The question hung in the air, simple yet profound. Ethan set down his fork, giving the moment the weight it deserved. He reached across the table and took her small hand in his work-worn one. "Yes, sweetheart," he said softly, his voice steady and sure. "And we always will be as long as we have each other." Lily's face broke into a smile that could have lit up the darkest night. "Promise?" "Cross my heart," Ethan replied, making the gesture that had become their special seal of truth since she was tiny. They finished their dinner sharing stories about the day, how Lily had helped hand out flyers at the store opening, how Mr. Weston had praised Ethan's leadership, and how even some of Ethan's old garage customers had come to shop, proud to see their former mechanic in his new role. After dinner, they worked together to clean up, just as they always had. Lily dried the dishes while Ethan washed. Their routine, a comfortable dance of father and daughter. She hummed a tune she'd learned in school, and Ethan found himself humming along, their voices blending in the peaceful kitchen. As the evening drew to a close, they followed their bedtime routine. Lily changed into her favorite pajamas, the ones with little hearts that Mrs. Henderson had given her, while Ethan tidied up downstairs. When he heard her call "ready," he climbed the stairs to her room. Her bedroom was small but filled with love. Drawings covered one wall, her artwork chronicling their journey from hardship to happiness. Her latest creation showed their family, Ethan in his new suit, Lily holding his hand, and Mrs. Henderson standing nearby with her signature cookies. Lily was already tucked under her covers, her stuffed bear clutched close. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "Would you like a story tonight?" "No," she said, surprising him. "I just want to talk to God with you." Ethan's heart swelled. He knelt beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. Lily closed her eyes, her face peaceful in the soft glow of her nightlight. "Dear God," she began in her clear child's voice, "thank you for my daddy, and for letting us be together. Thank you for Mrs. Henderson and her cookies, and for Mr. Weston, who saw that Daddy is special. And thank you for making us happy again. Amen," Ethan whispered, squeezing her hand gently. "Your turn, Daddy," Lily prompted, her eyes still closed. Ethan looked at his daughter's face. This precious gift he'd almost lost, and felt overwhelming gratitude fill his chest. He closed his eyes, kneeling there in the quiet room, and whispered simply, "Thank you." When he opened his eyes, Lily was already drifting off to sleep, her breathing deep and peaceful. He tucked the blanket more securely around her shoulders and kissed her forehead. Standing up, Ethan moved to the window. The night sky stretched vast and beautiful above their little home, stars twinkling like distant promises kept. He stood there for a moment, letting the peace of the evening wash over him. A smile touched his lips, not the uncertain, worried smile of the past, but one of genuine contentment. His heart, after so much struggle, was finally at peace. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Miller, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.